Since I started this YouTube project, I've been confronted many times with the question as to how one can become Polish. A question that's very difficult and dynamic to answer. However, in a three-part series with my good friends from Your Roots in Poland, we will analyze the process that one may undertake in becoming Polish, starting, of course, with genealogy. Joining us is my dear friend Kinga Urbański, who is a professional genealogist, I suppose it's called.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we've been working together on a project for some time now, made some progress, and I think there will be a
yeah.
much bigger film here on Cult America about it. But Kinga, today I would like to share with our viewers your perspective on what it takes to become Polish, starting with the groundwork of genealogy. For a little bit of background, can you share with our viewers where you're from, how you came into this field?
hmm hi, Ryan. Thank you very much for inviting me over. Yeah, I'm a historian. I am an archivist, and at some point of my university history, we figure out that there is a huge need, considering how many people emigrated from Poland. There is a huge need for them to uncover their history, and in this specific circumstances, Polish history. Yeah, so this is how the business started. This is how the years in Poland started. So the main aim was and still is to help people rediscover their Polish history. This is basically what we do every day. We are looking for information. We are looking for the documentation. We are doing the genealogy trees, and we connect all these stories together.
Wonderful. Kinga is an absolute rock star. She's very humble. In fact, she's known in Poland for hosting her own television show. So, just to put a little emphasis, if you're looking to rediscover your Polish roots, this is the person to talk to. And I'm so lucky to have had the pleasure. My case was a little bit different, obviously, because my mother started the genealogy project. You saw all the documents that she collected before the times of the internet. But where would you tell people to start now? Because everything's changed.
Yeah, everything is changing basically, but there are some particular the ways of how to start it, which will never change because actually you're starting from yourself. So basically, it's very good at the very beginning to gather all the information that you have in your memory, in the memory of your close ones, the memory of your whole family, basically, because everyone can know something differently. Anyone can know something more. Then you're exploring your own family archive. Because yes, all of you have your family archives, even if you didn't know that before, now you know it. So basically all the documents that may be related with your family history, so metrical records, birth, marriages, deaths, emigration records, school records that may help us get this initial information to start the whole adventure. And of course, photos, if you're lucky enough, you will get for example, the diaries or maybe the postcards that will also bring you more necessary details to start with. So this is how you start. Then, of course, you gather all that. It is the best to put that in one sort of a genealogical program or family tree to make it easy to navigate with that information. Having all that, you can use the internet sources. There are so many websites nowadays. There are so many Polish genealogy websites also available in English that you can explore. And you can get the documents, get the index information, because the process of indexing and digitalization of the records is really developing in Poland. And there are many, many organizations and volunteers involved in that process. So you'll definitely find something. So after you will explore all the online sources, of course, you can go to the archives. And this is, I think,
We did it, didn't we?
Yeah, quite a few ones, actually.
Yeah, well, I spent, I think, a part of a day with you in the archive in Krakow, which was a very interesting experience because it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. I mean, you kind of request all of the documents that you believe maybe could possibly contain something about the person of interest, and then you literally just read through it. Many of these documents are in Latin. Many of these documents are written in cursive. Well, all of them are in cursive, of course, and very difficult to read. What is that process like for you, and how does it feel when you make a discovery?
Yeah, so basically, first of all, regardless the fact that there are so many sources that are being available online nowadays, the best for the historian or the archivist that you can get is from the actual physical documentation. It's like a time travel. When you're touching this document, the texture is different, even the smell. Yeah, I don't know if it's really good for your health, you know, but still this is an amazing experience. Yeah, so being in the archive gives you that possibility to get through these documents, to get these experience, and but of course before you do it you have to get to know how the archives are operating, yeah, and especially within the Polish state archival system, which is quite easy, and people are basically very supportive on how to do that. But there are also some areas where you have to get a little bit of experience, so that will be really easy because, as you mentioned, Polish history, especially from the 19th century perspective, is a really complex one. So you will probably have to read documents of also Latin and German and then in Russian. And if you know the historical circumstances, you know also how to navigate through these documents. Yeah. Plus, as you know exactly, now our ancestors were very, very active. They were moving a lot. They were emigrating. They were changing their jobs. They were changing places where they were been living. So knowing this historical background is also a huge help while you're going through the actual research.
Yeah, for sure. Just backpedaling a little bit to reemphasize why it's important that you gather these family stories. You may recall my own grandmother that immigrated to the United States. You helped me read some of the very difficult to decipher Polish on the back of one of their photographs, one of the few photographs that we have. And the translation was something like the sun was shining in the children's eyes, right? And when you read that, it made no sense to us. It seemed very strange. But after interviewing my mother and some people around her, we were reminded that there was a period in time that the Polish immigrants in my family lived in Bisbee, Arizona. So it helped to connect the dots, absolutely. When it comes to searching in the archive, another kind of mystery I'm looking to unravel is, of course, my grandmother was said to have her tonsils removed, remember? And that was an operation that would have happened in what at the time was Galicia, I guess. And I'm curious, like, using that as a case study, where would we find such documents? How would we go about actually proving that this operation happened definitively?
But this operation actually took place in States, yeah?
No. On
In
this side
Poland?
of the, yes, in Poland.
Galicia.
It
So you'd
must
like
have
to
been Galicia, right?
So yeah, of course. So you would like to get the documentation or her treatment, like a proper medical treatment?
Just using this as a case study, if we were to try and prove that that operation happened, right? Because it might help us decipher that my grandmother's documents in the States were correct. Great-grandmother, I should clarify. How would we find, I mean, it seems like a very random thing. If there is documentation, how would you find it?
So yeah, so you can take it two ways actually. So you can use the actual physical sources, so the documentation. It's likely possible that sort of documentation had endured to our times, that you would find it in the state archives. But of course, and obviously, if such would exist, I would go for the state archive as a first place, or see and check what sort of hospitals or places that this treatment could take place were the oldest and remembers the time when your great-grandmother used to live there, and contact with them if they ever created a sort of an archive for the documentation that way they were producing. Yeah, so are they the state archive, like a local state archive, so Nowy Targ, or the local archive at the institution where this documentation was produced. Yeah, so this is one option. But the second option is our memory. Yeah, so our head archive. So basically, it's good to ask the family. It's good to ask about all these circumstances. So that's the other thing. Yes, of course, these stories not necessarily people may not really remember them, although does happen that they remember. One more document that I'm thinking about is, for example, the immigration documents, when they've been really examined, like people who are coming to United States, especially like through Ellis Island, like your great grandmother. Yeah, they have been examined very in great detail. Yeah, so that sort of treatment could have been even entered into that documentation. Yeah, so either U.S. documentation, local institutions that could have produced these documents, or state archives if that endured, or the memorial, as I mentioned.
Can you share with me some of the more interesting documents that you've discovered in an archive in your research process for your clients?
Yeah, there were many. So, but one of the most, on one hand, exciting, but also quite disturbing documents that I've had a chance to look through are the documents connected with the Second World War. Basically, there is this huge center of Bad Arolsen that is documenting all the activities that were taken by Second World War Germany and Nazis, basically. So all the victims and survivors documentation, yeah? And so it includes, among others, the documentation from the displaced persons camps. And for example, among this, again, when the person was entering that camp, they were undergoing a medical care, but also the medical examination. And for example, you can find among this documentation X-rays from the Second World War, like X-rays of their lungs, for example, because that was very like, if you had like pneumonia or something like that, it was possible like a lungs inflammation, that you would not be let into the camp because you may let other people, infected as well. Yeah. So this is like, you're getting the documents about the person, like personal data, basic personal data, like names, surnames, dates, places, all the camps that they went through, what was their war history, but also the full medical examination, like, as like the previous subject that we had, yeah, including the X-rays, which is like, yeah, that's like, creating the whole rough story and looking at this person from a different angle as well.
Do I understand correctly that German Nazi physicians were X-raying people that were sent to concentration camps to check whether or not their health permitted them to enter?
No. That was after the war. Displaced people's camp.
Okay. I misunderstood completely. So the displaced people's camp, who was in charge of that? Who was the authority?
Americans,
Okay.
allies. So basically, Americans and the Germans, but who, and the Russians, of course. Yeah. Who took down the German occupation, basically. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, no, that was for good. Yeah, these X-rays were being done for the good reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's incredible that you've come across documentation like that. What about photographs? Where can we find photographs of our Polish ancestors?
In most of the cases, we're finding them in our family archives, yeah, and sometimes it's incredible, and I really encourage you to do that, to look not just through your archives, but it may happen that your auntie or your uncle may have some hidden albums, or even there's some of the photos can be found within books or other pieces of documentation creation like that. So this is really amazing on one hand. On the other hand, of course, there are many photographs that can be still found in the archives. This is like not very common situation. They're comparing to the family archives, like or for example, the archives that are being created by the local societies is less, definitely. But still, especially as for the administration documentation, when they were issuing passports or visas or IDs, of course, if, for example, if a particular person didn't take their identification document for any reason, it stayed within the office, and you can find it within such documentation units. Yeah, or for example, the documents related with our school, with the education, basically. Yeah, so if that was a rule as for the 19th century, late 19th century and early 20th century, that your final high school certificate also included a portrait of the person who graduated.
Okay. So I think I can deduce your process to first speaking to the family, second hitting the archive, third contacting your roots in Poland so that a professional can actually bring you some progress to the process. But now I want to discuss a little bit about what it actually means to be Polish. How was that verified through genealogy? One of the strangest things that became apparent to me working with you guys are just how often the borders changed here in Poland. So when using my own ancestors as a case study, and it's very similar to millions of other people, they left on passports of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. In fact, I believe in their lifetime, they didn't know a Polish republic to have existed. And so therefore they were living in a completely different reality, which makes me beg the question, right? Am I an ancestor of Poles, or, as the documents would say, Austrians from Novi Targ that immigrated to the United States?
Just to begin, because this is a huge subject, but basically this is about the nationality, but also about the identity. Like my first question was, when your great grandmother was entering the United States on the ship manifest or on the lists, she had to state of what nationality is she, yeah, because there was a different column for the country and there was different column for the nationality, yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Like there are many cases, like people are coming from being Polish, but stating that they're coming, as you said, from Hungary or Austro-Hungary or Russia or Prussia or Germany, yeah, because there was no state of Poland for 123 years, so through all the partitions time, and this is basically also very psychological, but also historical question, yeah. So 19th century was the time when all the nationalisms, the identity, like a national identity was being created, like that was in the process. So most probably when if you would ask like a regular simple farmer in Galicia back in, I don't know, 1830s or 1840s, who you are and where you from, yeah, he would simply answer like, I'm from here. I'm not Polish, I'm not Ruthenian, I'm not German, I'm from here, I belong here. But then, of course, the whole process, the nationalizing processes and building the national identity happened. So we can see through the Polish history, through the literature, culture, from that point of view, because even though there was no state of Poland, like Poland was erased from the world maps, still our soul, like a Polish national soul, endured. And we can see that in our culture, especially in our culture history that was being passed over generations.
Sure.
So they felt really Polish. They were using the language, even though in many cases it was forbidden. There was a secret schools happening. So they will still like cherish and passing. So people were still cherishing, passing Polish culture, language, history, so on and so forth. Our country history is very long and very complex, and it could have been not forgotten or erased by the three occupants and the divisions time, just like that. So most definitely, those people within the partitions wouldn't call themselves Austrian or wouldn't call themselves Russians or Germans or Prussians. Of course, this is my perspective, but you would have to probably ask your great grandmother. But as far as I remember, she spoke Polish.
Yeah, of course, of course. And the family folklore has it that they were patriots of their culture.
Exactly.
And that's a big part of the reason, Kinga, when I became a Polish citizen, it took me 10 years to man up and do it, but I ultimately renounced my U.S. citizenship. And it was kind of a gesture of completing the circle, coming back to my roots and really owning that notion. But at the risk of contrasting my gesture, I still haven't quite established what it really means to be Polish because of all these factors. You know what I mean? Like, for the sense of my family, I could say what it means, but I've been making videos about Polish culture, Polish heritage, and celebrating Poland for so long now that, of course, there's been interactions with people who raise some really, really difficult to answer questions about it. For example, I was walking on Nowy Świat in Warsaw, outside of Bristol Hotel. An American man of Asian descent, he moved to Poland because he was watching Cult America videos. He came out of nowhere, and that he announced that, and I thought, wow, this guy's crazy. That was my first thought, like, what kind of a maniac? But after digesting it, as someone who's kind of become Polish, I was humbled and I was like honored that he would move here and be a part of it. He loved what Poland is all about. So what I'm trying to place here is like, who's really Polish? Because if this man I mentioned becomes a Polish citizen, learns the language, pays taxes, right, contributes to society, I think it's fair to say that he's become Polish. In the previous interview, my friend Os from Iraq came as a refugee, and he speaks Polish with his son, And so for me, it's hard to say that he isn't Polish. So from the perspective of a genealogist, like knowing what you know historically, but also with like in modern context, who would you say is Polish?
As you mentioned, this is a really complex and but also very interesting question. So from my nowadays perspective, not necessarily being genealogist or historian, I would say if you feel Polish, then you're Polish. Because I had this really funny, interesting situation in my life just lately, not about being Polish, but being Krakowian. I think it's quite similar because I was not born in Kraków, South Poland, but I moved here like 20 years ago. And
just let me interrupt you. I have it on good authority from real Krakowians that you need 3 generations.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no!
But go on.
Yeah, but still. So I was trying to find my place in world, and after many years in Krakow, I felt like, okay, I was not born here. I am not 3 generations back from Krakow, but I still like, this is my home, and I'm Krakowian finally. Yeah. And but I didn't have any really good way of how to prove it or confirm it. So I came across really nice Krakowian authors who are writing many articles and books about Krakow. They are like Krakow lovers, Krakowers, so to be so called. And I asked them, like, can you please tell me if after 20 years I can call myself Krakow girl, like proper Krakowian? And the author was like, how do you feel? Like, yeah, I feel like I'm being Krakowian. And what do you choose? Are you choosing to be Krakowian, or I don't know, Warszawian, or and I'm choosing Krakowian? And he was like, yeah, and this is the answer. You've chosen to be a Krakowian, and you're more Krakowian than I am, even though he's like 10 generations back Krakowian.
Yes,
So
yes.
maybe that's the answer, you know?
Well, you know what? It's so well stated, because this is an ability that immigrants have, right? I mean, if immigrants who love the country that they moved to, because they had to earn it, they had to earn their place there. And more I've been thinking that, like, our identity should be fixated on the present, right? Not necessarily even where our ancestors are from. That's so important. But what you contribute to, where you make your life, and where you leave your legacy, of course. And your Kraków story is wonderful. However, I know people who would just disregard, like, she is not a true Krakowian. It has to be 3 generations, and you have to be a doctor from Jagiellonian. You know, that's what they say. I know these people. I lived in Kraków for years. I love it, but there are some thresholds you have to pass through, of course, to be a part of it. Yeah, I mean, my daughter was born there, and so we have this internal joke that Zoe, she was born in Warsaw, Zuza was born in Kraków, so we have like
that's
little
gonna
tension
be
in the
eternal
family.
fight.
Yeah, exactly. My story, people have told me, is maybe a little bit unusual, that I moved back to the mother country, but I'm curious, because you've worked with hundreds, maybe even thousands of people exploring their roots. Have you come across others who came back to the motherland to become a part of it?
Not too many, to be honest. Like, mostly the people that I'm working with, they're still like working and living in USA. Like, most of them, actually, because one of the biggest Polish diaspora or emigration, like, almost, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think almost 21 million people of Polish descent living in America nowadays, having Polish ancestry. So yeah, most of my clients are still living and working in the USA, but more and more are coming and trying to prepare themselves for the retirement, for example. And so this is why they are also within our help. They're trying to get Polish citizenship through their descent, of course, which is not obvious.
Sure.
And it's not like you always, when you have Polish ancestry, you can get Polish/European citizenship. But still, this is one of the options. Yeah, but there are some, of course, who came back and they're settled here. But most of the ones that I know are in the process of moving.
Sure. Well, I hope that they come here. I hope that they discover maybe a slower life than they knew in the States, and many of the things that I've come to really, really appreciate about Poland. But it's a double-edged sword in a sense, because sometimes people could come here with an illusion of what Poland might be, and then try to transform it into what it was that they were leaving behind. And this is one of those things that I think, especially in the beginning when I lived in Poland, frightened me. You know, as an immigrant, I can really appreciate many factors of life in Poland that are obvious to Polish people, or that Polish people actually flat out dislike. And so it's like it's a funny thing. What Polish people see as progress, sometimes I feel is actually not good for the country. And that's another really, I think, difficult question to answer when it comes to immigrants, you know, changing the country. In my case, if I were to vote in a way that would, let's say, hold the country back from progressing, you know, that could make Polish people, I think, feel a little uncomfortable. So it gets really very complicated from every level. But I think your example of being a Krakowian really did put it into perspective. Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and as far as I understand, this was kind of a bastion of Polish culture, like as much as there could be a bastion for the time, right?
Yeah.
Because you were allowed to speak the language. What was it like in the other partitions?
So yeah, so like during the through the whole 19th century, the nationalistic and the moves for independence were progressing as well. We know the January uprising, and before the November uprising as well in 1830s. So people were trying to fight for their freedom. We know the person of Kościuszko, yeah, Tadeusz Kościuszko, who was also like believing in a dream of Poland become independent again. But the more Polish nation was trying to find their way to the freedom, the more obstacle they were facing. Yeah. So, for example, even within the genealogy example, so after the January uprising of 1863, Polish language, like in writing, was completely forbidden. So I can see that in the genealogical, in the metrical records, especially. Yeah. So in IT 62, when I'm reading through Russian partition, Russian part of Polish partitions documentation, I am reading them in Polish. But then 2 years from later, they are in Russian. Yeah. So Polish was forbidden. Polish, not just the language, but as I mentioned before, being taught about culture, about the history. They really thought like this is like amazing from nowadays perspective. Like so the empires that torn Poland apart really thought that they can, unroot our identity, our history that took over 1,000 years just like that, and so we will all forget about it. Yeah. So but it didn't happen eventually, of course. But the general ways, the politics were getting stronger and stronger against Polish nation in every partition, basically.
There's this saying that pressure creates diamonds, so
Yeah.
maybe that was the outcome. We have an interesting comment. I don't know if you can see that on the screen here from Jarek. He said he was told by an immigration lawyer from Poland that he would not qualify for Polish citizenship because 4 of his great-grandparents, although Polish, were from Prussia and the Russian partitions. Now, Jarek, we're going to do an episode fully dedicated to how one can obtain citizenship via Polish heritage. That's going to be with Kinga's team member. But I wonder what your thoughts are on this, Kinga, because it feels maybe a little bit unfair.
Yeah. So yeah, Jarek is right, and he's correct, because unfortunately, how the Polish law, the citizenship law, is constructed. So you can apply for the citizenship if you prove that your ancestors lived within the independent country already. So they lived here after 1918. Yeah, when Polish gained its independence back. Yeah, so that's the thing. Although there are other circumstances, and there's a lot of documentation that can support, because there are rules, but there are, of course, it's in the end it's up to the presidential office if you will get the citizenship or not. Yeah. So, but about these exceptions and how to do it, even though you don't have a proper after 1918 Polish ancestry connected with the Polish soil physically, this is something that Michał my colleague, will explain everything about it. Yeah.
So I think it would be best for Jarek to get in touch with your office, for example, to see about his case. But it's nice to know that you can make a case despite like different circumstances. And I could see where the Polish government comes from, of course, because there's a lot of people who could claim citizenship to a lot of places based on changing borders. And so they have to draw the line somewhere. But it does feel kind of unfair, especially since, if I saw correctly here, I think the guy actually lives in Poland. So, he's currently renting an apartment in Krotoshin. Where is that, actually?
Krotoshin?
Yeah. Normally I'm very good. I also had a TV show, 150 Cities, but I don't know Krotoshin. I'm sorry
I don't
to
remember.
say.
Jarek, if he's still watching us, can you tell us where Krotoshin is?
Yeah.
I
We
don't
should
remember.
put.
I think it's a city. Definitely a city, but I don't
Yeah,
remember what
yeah.
province is that.
We have an interesting message from Nick here. Nick is watching from Gdańsk, I guess. I was born in America to Lithuanian German parents.
Hmm.
Um, so he has Lithuanian citizenship, and I can avoid the Polish authorities. Well, I don't know. I would make the argument that Lithuanian citizenship isn't quite what Polish citizenship is, but I'm biased, aren't I? And
But this is really yeah, but that's a really interesting comment actually, because you see, like the ancestors came from Lithuania, but they were German,
yeah,
which is again when you like there were some part of Lithuania that used to be of Polish soil before the Second World War or before the Second World War ends, as well as Ukraine, as well as Belarus. So, like asking about the Pole, like if there were people who were living within the borders, which are now Lithuania, and had Polish surnames, like for example, Lviv, yeah, Ukraine,
yeah,
that was such a Galician Polish country. So basically, again, how you feel, what your ancestry is, what your ancestors' culture and historical focus was. It all depends, yeah. But still, again, it also shows that this guest of ours, the ancestors were of German origin, which also shows the multiculturalism of a Polish state. Yeah, not just a Polish state, but of course we have to have our basically what I intend to say. We have to have our head open. Yeah, there are of course official borders of each country, but there is no board for nationality. I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to contain or
Borders.
even really define, in a sense. Kinga, I met Germans who were Polish citizens, but German nationals, and they declared themselves as such. I believe it was in Elk. They have a whole museum. There's not many of them left, but when people were moved, when the borders had changed, they elected to stay put, take the new citizenship, but their heritage, of course. And I thought that must have been very interesting after the Second World War, to be living side by side with Polish people when you were German in that land. And but Jarek clarified here that it's close to Ostrów Wielkopolskie, and I've been there, so now I know
Okay.
what he's talking about.
Now
We have another interesting comment. This is kind of turning into a comment show. I didn't expect that, but people are contributing some fascinating stuff here. And with you being such an expert, I think it's worth looking at. So, my grandmother was DP born in Poland. Okay. The family records were unfortunately destroyed. Only has 4 church records. Any suggestions to finding the actual documents? She was told that without the birth certificate, it's nearly impossible to obtain citizenship. So, what do you think? If the records were destroyed?
Wołyń used to be of Polish territory as well before the second, like a part of it, of course, before the Second World War. And so the good information is that some part of that documentation was evacuated on the turn of Second World War, and they are being stored in Warsaw. Yeah, like the copies of the official metrical records. Not all of them, but many of them. So we can search through, and they're being stored in the Central Historical Archives of Poland, called AGAD.
Okay.
And they're even available online. So just you can drop me a line and I can send you the link to it. But nevertheless, some of the documentation is available here in Poland. And the other thing is that many of the documents, metrical records, during 1960s, 70s, that were being microfilmed by Mormons and are being now available through a family search portal. So you can also try to find these records in their catalog. Yeah, but
That's fantastic.
most definitely, I wouldn't say that if something was destroyed in the particular location, like there was a fire or simply the documents were stolen. Hopefully, especially as for the Roman Catholic or Greek Catholic records, there are being copies created that could have been stored now, that can be stored now in Warsaw or within the Mormons catalogs, records catalogs. Yeah.
You know, Kinga, sometimes I wonder if you realize the gravity of what you do. You know, when I got in touch with you, I decided that I had to clarify my family's story because my mother almost died, you know, and it was difficult to tell if she would be with us much longer. So it was one of those things I wanted to clarify for her and put into perspective. This Juliana, who just left a comment under our video about the burnt records, she might very well find those records thanks to your help or maybe from the advice that you just gave and become, you know, a Polish citizen as a result, thanks to obtaining these records. So you have a really powerful impact on people's connection to their heritage, which I think is so important. Is that a motivating factor for you?
Yeah, it is actually, you know, because in the end, it's like about a little bit about karma. You know, when you make people happy, it should go back. No, but I do realize how much does it mean, especially in nowadays world, nowadays political circumstances, to have options, for example, as for the different citizenships, yeah, to have option to choose whether I would like to live here or there with more. With more advantages that the citizenship, particular citizenships give, and apart from the putting aside the citizenship matter, I do know that your family. I'm sure after 12 years in the business now, or 12 years considering that your family history, your family past really impacted your identity where you're now at. Yeah, without them we wouldn't be sitting today and chatting and having the interview. That is for sure. Yeah, so yes, this is an important part of our lives, and I am more than sure that everybody at some point of their life, someone sooner, someone later, some people sooner, some people later, they are getting to the point about asking themselves who they are. And the culture and the heritage and the history is they are crucial parts of that identity, and this is what I'm sure of. Yeah, and it's important to know.
It's a lovely take, and I think it's something that people need to hear in today's day and age. We have one last comment, which I'm trying to wrap up here. I actually have to go and pick someone up from the airport, but it's so fascinating to speak with you. So this is from Tyrell, I think it's pronounced, who was born in Canada. His mother's from Poland and his father's from Jamaica. He's confirmed Polish citizenship in 2020. In 2021, he went to Poland for the first time to meet his family in Poland as well. That's so touching. So it just goes to show, and you really actually helped clarify some things for me, that it's really more about nationality than citizenship, perhaps. And citizenship can be a nice confirmation factor of that nationality. It can also, give you the privilege of being to live within the bounds of your motherland. And any last words for farewell, Kinga? Some advice for people?
So one big advice, many people who are coming to our office or contacting with us, they do say one thing, and that they regret that they did their history, their family history, that they got interested so late, that they could have done it before. And of course, we're living in the circumstances when everybody's rushing for everyday life. We have to earn, we have to have so many different different topics that we have to cover in our everyday life. But just through finding sometimes a time to, for example, to record your family, your relatives, basically. Yeah, you can record some facts. You don't have to write that down. You don't have to fill out this family trees. Just having your own phone, record the facts, record the information that the other family members know, and just save it in the cloud, save it in your computer, and you will come back to it one day, and you will be saying thank you to yourself that you did it before. Yeah, you don't have to organize it, just save it, because our memory is very, scared. We sometimes think that, and many people that I spoke with think that, our grandmothers used to tell us so many stories, and we think like we're gonna remember them forever. No, we're not gonna remember them forever. So it's good to save them when we still remember the facts, remember the details, because it will be very helpful to fulfill our need for knowing yourselves in the future.
Amazing. Well, Kinga, thank you so much for taking the time today. I look forward to speaking with Karolina next about how to learn Polish culture. I think it's going to be a fascinating talk. And for everyone watching right now, I would insist that if you're looking to kind of recover your Polish heritage or become Polish yourself, start looking into this. Like Kinga said, the steps are rather simple. Talk to your family in depth, interview them with genuine curiosity. Then Ancestry.com, MyHeritage services we've promoted on this channel, they can help you really start to find some basic documents, birth certificates, census records to discover where your grandparents live. But when you make your way back to the motherland, especially if you don't speak Polish, and definitely if you don't speak Latin, German, and Russian, you have to get in touch with someone who can help guide you through the process. This was my experience. My mother took, 15, 20 years to collect the information that she had, and it was a lot. She had to actually get medical documents released by the courts. She had to travel for that. This was before the internet. But nothing was comparative to actually being here on the ground and with the support of professional genealogists. And so I think I've made my case. Subscribe if you would like to see our follow-up video with Karolina about acclimating to Polish culture, and then we're going to do one more about how to receive Polish citizenship through your bloodline, which should be very fascinating. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.